Hi, everybody, and welcome to From the Heart. I'm Liz Walker. I am so glad to be back with you again. It's been a while. We're trying to revamp our live stream, searching for healing and hope, but I'm so excited about our subject today. I have been on a book tour for the past several weeks of this book that I wrote about collective trauma and healing. It's called No One Left Alone. And this book tour has just been an extraordinary experience for me. But I've got to go back and meet people I knew, people who are in the book, people who changed the course of my life. The story, of course, is how an entire neighborhood, how an entire community was affected by the traumatic and horrible death of one young man, Cory Johnson. And so we talk about the impact of trauma because it can reach into the most surprising places. Tonight's guest is a man who knew Cory Johnson really well. He was his pastor, Pastor Hurmon Hamilton, who is also, I consider you my pastor, as I welcome Hurmon Hamilton onto our show, because I profile Pastor Hamilton in the book about his work with Cory, his work with the family, and how Cory's death really impacted him. I don't even think he knew at the time how deeply traumatized he was by that call in the middle of the night when Cory's mama, Deborah Fitzpatrick Johnson, called him. So Micah, if you could bring Pastor Hurmon Hamilton in so that we could begin our conversation.
There, Pastor Liz, what's happening?
all the way from Silicon Valley, California, where I spent the weekend. And I must say, it was so good to see you and your new community of faith. Thank you for joining us tonight.
You were outstanding. They're still talking about you and stuff like that. I'm getting a little afraid. They're talking about kicking me out and bringing you in.
Don't even go there. Pastor Hurmon Hamilton is the man who got me to be pastor of Roxbury Presbyterian Church by hook or crook, I think. But God certainly used Pastor Hamilton, and it has been a transformative turning point, which was his sermon 2 weeks ago, a turning point in my life. But let's get right to this book, because when I wrote the book, I was even surprised how much a part of Cory's story that you were all the way through. So tell me about your connection with Cory Johnson and his family.
Well, I was the pastor of Roxbury for 17 and a half years. From day one, the person who I met day one coming on to being the pastor was Cory's grandfather, Ozzie Fitzpatrick, who was an elder at the church. He and his wife, Cory's grandmother, Barbara Fitzpatrick, picked me up, I was visiting members, and then they took me to their house for lunch. And that just started a very special relationship. My wife was in medical school during those early years. So every Sunday after church, me and my kids would show up at the Fitzpatrick's house. We would eat like kings and queens and play spades and talk all kind of smack. And all of his girls kind of took their relationship with Jesus to the next level. They became a part of the core leadership team that helped to transform that church. Cory was a young man at the time, running through the house. And I just was a part of his growing up years and, encouraging him with his grades, his schools. If he needed a little talking to, I got a chance to do that. When he became a teenager and a young adult, like most teenagers, young adults, you try to find your own way. But at the end of the day, if he would find his way back to me, we would sit down, we'd process, we would talk. He was just a good kid. And so I knew him from probably about the age of 5, 6.
Wow.
One of his death.
Wow. And then in 2010, you get that middle of the night call that nobody wants to get from his mom.
Yeah, I'll never forget it. And for me, this is where the story of trauma starts. in a very dramatic way. I mean, the Fitzpatricks were in many ways extended family for me.
Sure.
As is the case, by the way, for most pastors who are pastoring, there's always that inner circle of relationships that is extended family. And my phone rings and I answer it at 3 o'clock in the morning. Know it must be a major issue, and there's a scream. And Deborah, Cory's mom, says, "Rev, he's gone. He's gone." I thought she was talking about her father, who was up in age, and it would make sense, maybe a heart attack or whatever the case is. I said, "Who's gone?" She said, "Cory." I could have. I said, "Who?" I couldn't comprehend.
Right.
She says, "Cory."
Right.
It was stunning. I went to the hospital. I met them at the hospital. I stayed with them. She had to identify the body, and so I walked with her and went to the room where they pulled this picture up on the screen, and so that she could identify that was him. And I couldn't believe what I was going through. When I got back, I just kind of shepherded them all the way through. And I think it was about 6 o'clock. It was a Sunday morning. I'm supposed to be preaching in a matter of hours.
Wow.
And I'm trying to figure out, how do I explain this? The Fitzpatrick family's at the core of the church. Everybody knew Cory. How do I explain this to the church? This is going to be horrific for the church. But more importantly, how I was going to survive it. I called my dear friend, your former pastor, Ray Hammond. I don't know, must have been 6 in the morning, 6:15. I'm sitting in my office like a zombie. And I said, "Ray," and I told him what has happened. And I said, "Man, I need some help." Ray made his way down to the church, and he sat with me for about an hour, prayed with me. I'm those initial emotions of shock and numbness and all that stuff that comes. I'm right there.
Yeah.
And thank God for Ray, who helped to kind of get me ready to move forward to preach and to talk to the congregation.
You had to get through the day. I mean, that's your job. That's your calling. That's what you're supposed to do. But here's where I thought we could really kind of go deep, because as a pastor, you're expected to get us through. That's what you do. And I don't even think we think of you in terms of you're shocked or you're hurting.
Right.
Did you even really, I mean, I know you were going through that in that moment, but you just said, "I'm just going to buck up and do what I have to do." Did you know you were in shock or know you had been traumatized?
I knew when I called Ray, I knew I was in trouble. That's probably how I would explain it. I knew I was in trouble. I knew that I was in deep, this was like a family member. I was in trouble. And I needed a pastor and a dear friend and someone who understood. That was Ray, obviously, because of his issue. So I knew I was in trouble emotionally. I wouldn't have used the word traumatized then, but I was in horrific pain, horrific grief, confusion. I got that.
Yeah.
And I also could not figure out how I was going to find the emotional and spiritual strength to both inform the congregation and preach to the congregation on that Sunday morning. And so I knew that was, so God really did help me. But yes, I knew I was in trouble. I wouldn't have used the word trauma though.
Right. Because, when you and I talked about it earlier, before I finished the book, you had told me, yes, you knew you were in trouble, but you weren't thinking in terms of a psychological, I mean, all the ramifications of what.
No, not at all. Not at all.
You really helped Cory's family. The church came through. It was a beautiful, from what I hear, a beautiful funeral. I mean, I hate to even say that, but I think most people understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Touching a memorial to Cory. But afterwards, I would imagine a few weeks or months afterwards, you realized they needed some extra help. How did you end up calling in for grief counselors? Because that doesn't normally happen in churches.
Yeah, I think probably I was slowly becoming aware of the need of the role that mental health plays in ministry and the need for therapy. And we had already been in touch with and had begun to build a relationship with Trinity Episcopal Church. And they had a counseling center that they had pioneered that was really a wonderful counseling center that created an opportunity for people of faith and no faith to go because we trusted Trinity. I trusted Trinity. Carlene, who is now part of your team and who was a therapist, Arvell, who was also a partner therapist in that. I reached out to them and said, "Hey, here's what's going on." They were aware of the violence in general, but they had gotten close enough to Roxbury to sense that. I think I was pretty honest about my own effect, but I knew that Deborah and them needed some help. And
Right.
so I just made the recommendation and see could I connect them because I could tell that the traditional spiritual stuff there's a place for, and but it also had its limits.
Now, you did that, Pastor, but I don't think back in 2010 that was the traditional way to go in churches, at least not from my experience.
It wasn't.
To call grief counselors in. Most pastors handle this themselves. That's my experience. I thought what you did was very unusual, was it? It
wasn't a part of what pastors did.
Right.
But you know, in many ways, I kind of treated the Fitzpatricks as though they were my family, and I just did instinctively what I would have done for my family. By then, I was very much aware of mental health and the need of mental health professionals. I would preach about, God gives us therapists, you ought to use them. So that wasn't, that was a part of my ministry, especially the latter several years of, Roxbury was full of violence and young people getting killed and families and so forth. Had affected our congregation multiple times. We funeralized tons of people, unfortunately, over the years. And so it became very clear to me somewhere in my last 5 years of pastoring in Roxbury that there is a very critical role for mental health. So I was referring people kind of more or less generally that you need to, even for marriage stuff, and death, if we could get you to a therapist, that's wonderful.
But really, let's be honest, that's not the normal. So
no, that was not the norm, particularly in the Black church.
Why do most pastors, and we don't know names, but why is the culture generally not Black, particularly Black culture, Black religious culture, not open to mental health support?
I think there's several reasons. I think there's some historical reasons for it as well. I think that in the Black community, there's a kind of a general distrust of physicians in general, particularly therapists, people getting in there playing around with your mind. I think there's a kind of, and most therapists are white. So there's some racial historical stuff about, am I going to trust these folk with my mind? Secondly, I think a lot of Black pastors fear that a therapist will separate people from their faith and turn them into anti-Christians in a way. They're gonna take this approach, and by the time you get finished, these people are not going to believe in Jesus anymore. That runs very rampant. That's a huge portion of it. We just don't. It all comes back to you just don't trust. In general, these therapists to be partners with you in ministry.
That really came out during COVID. Well, it was amazing because we had already started, obviously, Can We Talk by then, but the idea of trust was like a major obstacle for people even getting the shots or taking counsel or anything. Did you find that where you were?
100%. I mean, one of your team members, Miss Davis, who you brought with.
Shondell, exactly.
Shondell, her story is a perfect example. She ended up going to a therapist. She was honest with the therapist. Before she could get home, the people from the city is there to pick up her 6-year-old child. She doesn't know what she said in the therapy that would trigger something like that. That story is the fear, historically, is the fear. It's an example of the fear that African Americans in general have, certainly as therapists, and oftentimes of white physicians in general. Can I really trust these people, or are they going to take advantage of me? Pastors, you add the theological piece on top of it. Historically, we just have not recommended. We haven't trusted mental health professionals.
And I'm not so sure, and I'd like to ask you what you think. I don't know if the system of mental health in different hospitals, I'm not indicting everybody, but it seems to me that we still got a problem, that this hadn't necessarily been corrected. You would have thought COVID might have corrected it, but it did not.
And the mental health, no, we still have a problem. The mental health system itself is so fragmented and broken. And the quality of the mental health depends upon, if you're a non-Christian person, you'd say it like this: it depends upon luck. Do I get a good mental health professional, or do I get a not so good mental health professional? And it's possible for you to get, for your child to be in one part of a mental health system, for you to be in another part of a mental health system. Those two systems don't ever talk. It's just fragmented. It's broken. There are some mental health professionals are quick to over medicate and go that route. It's just, it's still a maze. It's still threatening in many ways to get into that system and really find a safe space there. And especially for African Americans, if you're going to get a bad deal, we tend to think that we'll be the first to get a bad deal.
And history has proven that in so many ways.
Yes.
How do you think we're going to change things like this? And I'm not doing a commercial for Can We Talk, because we can talk about that later. But how globally or nationally can this change? Can we heal the system?
Well, let me back up and take a step. The reason why I was able to refer Deborah and them to therapists was because I really did trust the Trinity people. Mm-hmm. I had a relationship with them. I knew how high quality they were. I knew that they got, even though they weren't Black, they understood as best as they could the African American context. They weren't coming with a certain level of judgment and all that kind of stuff. So I do think there has to be intentionality at building trust. And I think churches and pastors are called to play a key role in this. Mm-hmm. Intentionality of building trust between the healthcare community, the mental health part of the healthcare community, and the church. I think that's huge. Secondly, the mental health system really has to be reworked. It is just for someone who believes in it and has benefited from it, and even I still have trust issues around it because it is so broken and so fragmented and disjointed. And oftentimes they're not even clear about what they don't know. Mm-hmm. And so I just think that some real system thought has to be brought to the whole system. There in Massachusetts, perhaps Boston as a smaller location. And I think mental health professionals, faith leaders, people who have the power to actually reorganize the system, I think they all got to get in the room together and start talking and being honest about what's broken, what's the challenges, and begin to try to imagine a way forward. And I believe they can do that.
I agree with you. I don't know if now is the time with the political upheaval we're going through now, or it might happen. So I'm not optimistic right away. But that's why I think, and this is the commercial, that's why we started Can We Talk, because we realized that everybody needs help. The system needs help. People need help. Churches need help. And this was a way to do, we're not, therapeutic. We don't fix anybody, but we can, walk alongside people who are struggling, just as you did with Cory's family. So I am most humbled to be a part of that. But I want to talk to you and thank you for being open and letting us know what you went through during that time. Your church, we were in your church this weekend, New Beginnings Community Church in Redwood City. You have 3 campuses or 4? I can't keep up.
We have 2. We have 2 in-person campuses. We have an online campus, and we have a 4th campus that is in the process of being renovated. That we're going to move from. Once it's done, we'll move from where we are. We're worshiping in a Jewish synagogue, which has been amazing, to what will be our permanent home.
What I saw there just this weekend, and we went there to tell your congregation about the Can We Talk program, about our own journey in mental health. But what I saw and what touched me so deeply is you're taking healing to that other level, healing, the reconciliation, the church in the world, people, cultures. You have the most diverse church I have ever seen, I've ever participated in. So was that your intent? Was it to do this kind of reconciling? Or you may not even look at it that way. Is that how you look at New Beginnings?
I think that diversity, well, first of all, let me just back one. I want to pick up where you left off at what you call the commercial for Can We Talk. I think it is one of the most innovative efforts. It technically, I just really think it can revolutionize the capacity of the church to make a meaningful difference in a broader and bigger and deeper way. And we're taking it very seriously on our end. We've got lots of conversations going on. We're going to figure out a way to figure our way there. But the fact of the matter is, it's when a church can create safe space and gather community, and where individuals can stand up and tell their trauma story without judgment, without feeling like somebody's trying to take advantage of them. That is at the heart, oftentimes, of what Jesus did. He listened to people. They shared it, and you go through the stories. They tell him their stories, and he leans into those stories with his healing presence and power. So I love this. I love Can We Talk? I'd highly recommend it. I'm so proud of you and your leadership and your team. It's fantastic. So I just want to say that. And I'm hoping some people are listening. I know you're an African American pastor. Roxbury Presbyterian Church is in a what is historically considered a minority community, urban setting. But we're going to look at this. We have a suburban campus and an urban campus. We're multi-ethnic, multi-class. So whoever you are listening to this, if you're a part of a church or faith community, here's an opportunity. I'm serious, because we all have trauma. Divorce is a trauma. Waking up and discovering you got to care for your parents, and they have early dementia is a trauma. Discovering that you have cancer is a trauma. We just a full range. We're all dealing with a wayward teenage child that is going through all kinds of challenges and turning your house upside down. That's a trauma. Absolutely. So, this program, Can We Talk? I just think is just a gift from heaven, raised up there in Roxbury Press, and so I highly recommend it. So I just wanted to say that. Well, I didn't get to say that. Pastor Liz didn't know I was going to say that.
It was a seed planted by things that you had already done. So that's how God works. So I am thoroughly convinced that it's going to go where it's supposed to go. But I thank you for saying that. But what you are doing, again, this is a mutual admiration society, I guess, tonight. But your church is, how did you get there? Well, let's first, we have a little clip that I think we have from your church that you show if people have come to visit. So Micah, if you will roll that video, I think it's like about a minute long, so people can get an idea of New Beginnings.
I'm super excited that you have found this YouTube channel. My name is Hurmon Hamilton. I am the senior and founding pastor of New Beginnings Community Church. And listen, we've organized this YouTube channel just for you. All of our current and previous message series are right here. Now listen, if you're trying to figure out how to navigate this complicated thing called life, this channel is for you. You can also engage in our live worship broadcasts 9 and 11 a.m. Pacific time. So please go ahead and subscribe. Click the subscribe button as well as that bell icon. Watch, like, share this with your friends. Invite your friends to also watch along and comment. Let us know how we're blessing your life. We'll see you soon.
It is an amazing church. I have never seen so many different kinds of people coming together in a church service. So what was the plan? How did you get there?
It's all God. I really can't take any credit, to tell you the truth. What's really remarkable is you know that that an organization called Greater Boston Interfaith Organization was born in the basement of Roxbury Presbyterian Church. I was one of the founding leaders and one of many who helped give birth to an organization that brought people together across race and class and neighborhood and religion. And I ended up being the president of it in the latter, I guess, the last 5 years of my journey there, 8 years maybe. And the last year and a half of being pastor of Rox Pres, I recognized that had been blessed to exercise enormous influence. We had the largest Jewish communities as part of the organization, the largest Muslim communities as part of the organization. We had progressive, conservatives, evangelical, Christians, all part of that, and different ethnicities. So the long and short of it, I started walking around. I think I told you guys this when you were here, 3 times a week, praying in an empty sanctuary. God, bring that diversity here.
Wow.
Why can't we be that church? And I just started praying, and lo and behold, I had no idea that God was preparing me and had been preparing me all those years. And when the time was right, to my shock, he picked me up, lifted me out of Rox Pres, and dropped me into a church called Abundant Life Christian Fellowship. It came on as their pastor. It had gone through its own trauma. By the way, organizations go through trauma. So it's gone through trauma. It's like a 7,000 member church. It become about 2,000 members. But it was radically diverse. Exactly everything that I prayed about right here in Silicon Valley. I was the pastor there for 2 years. And out of that church, New Beginnings was born. Wow. And it's all the work of God. And you're right, we're radically diverse across political. We got Republicans and Democrats, progressives, conservatives, Black, white, Asian, Pacific Islanders, Latinx, everywhere, very wealthy people. I like to say it like this: people who have lots of resources and people who have very, very little resources, all worshiping together. And any other way that you think of diversity here in the West Coast, it's in the church at NBCC, and it's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress. But okay, 2 questions, because I get excited about this. You are politically diverse at a time that nobody, and that's the one thing that we can't do in this country anywhere, from where I understand and what I see is bring people who have different political positionings together. How does that work? Do you handle issues? Do you just ignore some of the current issues? How do people disagree and stay together?
Well, several things. Number one, we talk about ourselves as a Jesus first church, which means Jesus is the first and highest loyalty in the church. We agree on who Jesus is and the fact that we want to follow him. And that creates space for us to disagree on a whole lot of other things. Secondly, a value of the church is that we facilitate disagreement. One of the things that I say regularly is that you don't have to agree with everything I say to be blessed by most of what I say. So when the pastor says you don't have to agree with everything that I'm saying, it creates a certain kind of culture that it's okay to agree to disagree. Thirdly, we really do try to teach the importance of learning how to listen to and interact with each other's story. And I say in NBCC, if you find yourself getting into political discussion, whatever, halt it, stop it, ask for what is the story behind this position.
Wow.
And in that story, we're going to always find that embedded in that story is going to be pain and our fear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And once you unpack that, you listen to learn. You don't listen to persuade. That's what we teach. Listen to learn, not to persuade. Once we unpack that, then we can step back and we hear each other's story. We may disagree with the conclusions, the political conclusion, the cultural conclusion, whatever it is that you reach, but we think about you differently.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a different perception of who you are. And that is the basis upon which we build our relationships on. And so that's been working pretty good. Now, in terms of political stuff, I'm very thoughtful about what I take on. And I do periodically take on the hot buttons issues. I don't do it every week. I don't do it every month. But when I feel like something has risen to a particular point and it allows me to ask the question, how should Jesus followers respond to this? Mm-hmm. And that's essentially what I'm trying to teach. I'm staying within the biblical context as I deal with it. And then we move on. Because I'm the founding pastor of that church and I've been there this decade, I have earned a certain amount of trust.
Sure.
Know that I'm not trying to dog them out and I'm not trying to play games. And because I don't do it weekly, or, I'm just sounding off on whatever. In general, people have confidence and they will at least think about whatever it is that I'm challenging them about. If they take off their Fox News and their CNN, earpieces and just try to hear me from the experience that I'm trying to lay in terms, I'm going to always tell stories and so forth and so on. So I think that's been helpful. To be honest, NBCC is not the church for everybody. And we upfront about that. It looks great to show up there. To get in relationship with people who are different from you is hard work. It really is. It takes some humility. It forces you to think about some stuff that you don't want to think about. It creates, you've got to work to build a sense of comfort in that context, and it's just not for everybody.
Right.
And we're okay with that. And believe me, when I take on these issues, I have people who lead from the right, and I have people who lead from the left, and I'm okay with that too.
But you say it's not for everybody. I have always believed, and maybe I'm just getting bolder in my old age, that this is the answer, that this kind of approach to religion, to mental health, to everything is what you're already doing.
Yes.
So you are a model. So maybe it's not for everybody, but maybe we got to figure out a way that we can get there. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I absolutely. I do. We believe that diversity has been given, this radical diversity, and still being rooted in the evangelical. I want to say this out loud. Still being rooted generally in an evangelical theological context, right? Because usually a church like ours, you're not surprised to find that on the progressive end. You don't expect to find it in a kind of an evangelical context. Mm-hmm. So, and I try to hold on to that, even though politically that word evangelical has been hijacked and polluted and toxified. But I refuse to give it over to forces like that. So we do believe that God has given us this diversity to steward, and that it is and can be and should be a model. It is a solution to the challenges that our country and our world is facing. And hopefully in the next 12 months, I've got a book coming out that's going to make this point. I'm trying to follow your lead, Pastor. You were able to do it. I'm 13 chapters in. I got 4 more to go. Pray for me. Pray for me.
I look forward to your book. Keep writing, and I know it'll be good. I know well. But listen,
let me say one more thing. Just in terms of what I lay out in that book, which is what we try to practice. Jesus is the model. And what did Jesus teach? He taught radical empathy, radical compassion. He taught the importance of listening to each other's stories. He taught the importance of breaking labels, not allow labels to define who you are and other people to put labels on you. So I think this is what the church is called to do in this slice of history. Now,
and I agree with you. And yet, and I'm not trying to start a debate, but yet it's this battle of the narrative that the church is engaged in against itself.
Yes.
I'm talking about the big church. So I
agree with you. 100%.
Radical love, radical empathy, or radical building walls and keeping people out, and it's only you and me who can be Christian. Do you have any kind of hope that we can bring that to some kind of, or is it always going to, because that just seems almost impossible to get the church, in itself reconciled to itself.
Yeah, I find hope in the fact that what we used to say in the Presbyterian Church, this, Jesus is the head of the church, and it's his body. And at the end of the day, I believe he's going to continue to do the work of redemption. But I do think it's frustrating to me. I want to just be honest here. It's very frustrating to me. Historically, I've held a position that I generally don't talk about any part of the church in general, as we just let people do that. But some of the stuff that I have seen in the last 5 years requires being called out. And so there's a place for that too, right? Yeah. And again, I don't think we have to do it every week or every month. No. But I think we have to help people to distinguish between a healthy expression of Christianity and unhealthy expression of Christianity. And we have to help people distinguish between evil masquerading as Christianity.
Yeah.
And hate masquerading as love. So,
and I think if you may let me throw this in, we have to call it out. We can't just we can't just say it's kumbaya, because you got to call it out. In trauma, one of the things, I love discussing this with you. I'm so glad to see you. It's been a while. We could just get Ray Hammond here, I'd be in 7 days. But in Can We Talk, we say the first thing you have to do, you have to name the pain.
Yes.
The only way you can heal is to know what's wrong, right?
Yes. That's correct.
And that's what I think we really have to come to grips with. The evangelical church, the progressive church, everybody.
That's right.
I don't want to do that, but I think you're gonna have an answer for me.
Well, I don't know, but we're gonna keep working on it. We're gonna keep working on it, And you get my age, and you want to be the best steward you can of what years you have left, and we're gonna be working on it.
Well, I am so optimistic, and I'm saying this out of the depths of my heart, from the heart. I am so optimistic from what I have seen at New Beginnings Community Church. We were just blown away. There were so many, so many great things. Here's a statement from Marilyn Unger Aripi, who says, although I'm not a Christian, I see this is the job of all faith leaders, which I think you kind of pointed out to a little earlier. We know we're coming, you and I are coming, we're Jesus people, but it's an open conversation, right? Jesus has conversations with everybody. Don't you? That's what the Great Interfaith Organization was all about.
Absolutely, 100%. And I said to people, I had some issues initially about getting into an interfaith context, because usually you have to water down your faith and so forth and so on. And the guy that helped convince me, John Heinemeyer, Pastor John, the late John Heinemeyer, said, look, you can be who you are as a Jesus follower, as a Christian, as long as you let the Muslim be who they are and the Jewish person be who they are. I said, great. As long as Jesus is welcome in the room, I'm cool with it. He don't have to sit at the head of the table. He's Jesus wherever he sits. So that's to the point that, yeah, Christians ought to be facilitating dialogues across faith. And the fact of the matter is the stuff that's going on in the Christian community, there's a version of it going on in the Muslim community. There's a version of it going on in the Jewish community. And that we all have to call each other account because evil is real and it is at work. And religion is one of its main tools.
Right. Well, as down as we get about evil, and it is real, we can show some hope because God uses people like you.
Wow. And like you and that amazing team that you have at Can We Talk. My goodness.
Right back at you and your amazing church and your amazing multi-campus witness for God in this broken world. So thank you so much for, I expect the next time I come there, you'll have whole cities. Look at this. Is this your 11 o'clock service?
Yeah, it's 11 o'clock.
Yeah. And you do it in a Jewish temple. Now, tell me about that relationship.
It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. And Rabbi Ezra is the rabbi there. It's a conservative Jewish synagogue, but the rabbi and me, we are on the same page. We just love each other like brothers. And this has been a very difficult time for him and his community, as you might imagine. And I just will say this: the whole Palestinian Jewish thing is very complicated. But Rabbi Ezra is an example of someone who is 100% committed to his people, to the protection and safety of his people, calling out the anti-Semitism that is rising in this country, and at the same time saying that Palestinians deserve to have a state of their own, deserve to be free of the suffering that is happening now. And there are tons of people who are 100% committed to Israel, but who disagree with a lot of the decisions that the government is making. And that goes just like there's tons of people here in America who's completely committed to American democracy, but disagree with whatever government is in charge. Right now, you have a Republican administration, but when the Democrat administration, there's tons of people who disagree. So, that's just a shout out. It's been a wonderful, we partner together in different ways and we love each other. And when I exit and our congregation exits that facility, we will maintain our partnership and support.
I hope so, because that's what it's going to take. And it's going to take, it's risky. The biggest threat we have, I think now in this country is silence.
Yes.
Is to be afraid to speak out.
Yes.
To be so intimidated by, whatever you want to call it. We don't have to call any specific issues, but you got to speak up. You got to name it and be, you got to participate. You got to participate.
That's right. You really do. And everybody's got to find their role in it and figure out, how they are strategic. What is it that you're strategically called to do? My role is different from yours and so forth and so on. But we got to figure out what that role is, and we got to be faithful at it and courageous in it.
Absolutely. To live fearlessly and in great joy. Hurmon Hamilton, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. When your book comes out, you can come right here. We will.
Thank you. I'm gonna hold you to it. Let me give a shout out to Roxbury Presbyterian Church. Just one of the best churches on the planet. I love them, and I'm so grateful, Pastor Liz, for your leadership that was there for the last decade. And woo, God be praised.
God is showing up and showing out in so many ways. If you look for God, you will find God. That's a guarantee. So,
amen.
Thanks a lot, Pastor Hamilton. Thank you all for joining us. We'll be back here next Tuesday with another fascinating conversation from the heart. Have a good day, everybody. Have a good evening.
God bless you all.